I guess this is a question video. I'm trying to get some response from people. I think that, from my own perspective, the more that I have thought about it, I, I've said I don't know how many videos that atheism doesn't make any sense to me. And when people hear it, I think, imagine that I'm advocating a religion or a particular kind of faith in something that's supernatural, or I don't know what they hear. I don't believe in anything like a creator. There's nothing that is, we'll say, supernatural. There's nothing that's outside of existence. Um, I mean, let me try it this way. I don't know how to get at this. And again, I don't believe in life after death. I don't believe that there's any need for a register for things beyond the mundane and somewhat humble here and now. Some of this, I think, notions of the divine or notions of God, whatever that means, a lot of it's simple. It has to do with love and compassion, with real grand notions of forgiveness and forgiving in lots of ways on lots of fronts. I think one way to come at it would be through Sartre's work. Sartre has a distinction between being in itself, being for itself, and being for others. And so my being in itself, the sort of sheer massivity of my body, the sheer facticity of it as material substance. Well, it is a being in itself, but there is another kind of being that's infected with negation, that consciousness whereby I am what I'm not and I'm not what I am, as Sartre would say, right? That's his definition of consciousness. So that even though I'm thick with the world, through and through of it, and indigenous with the matter all around me, there's a kind of room making nothingness that infects the world such that the world can be at a distance. And so there is this kind of being for itself, right? That's different than simply being in itself. And again, by being for itself, he means consciousness, right? He means consciousness itself. But then there is being for others. And being for others flees from me. It's that part of others which comes through me and in that sense challenges the boundaries between self and others. So there is both a me that flees from me because it comes into the world through others, and I am others in the mode of not being them, as Sartre would say. I think you can sort of see how Emmanuel Levinas, he spins this out in this notion of alterity and God as radical otherness, a kind of otherness that opens through the particular other. So the widow, the orphan, the particular face of the homeless other becomes a window for compassion, love, forgiveness, and to the ultimate other. And when I say the ultimate other, I don't mean a being, not a guy in a sky, but I guess a recognition of otherness. Like if you imagine, like if you try to put God into that schema that Sartre lays out, you might say that God has no being in itself. So in that sense, yeah, God's not substantial. And God doesn't even have being for itself. That is, God wasn't a consciousness who made stuff, who is there of things, but God is simply and purely being for others. I think this is partly why in, popular culture you see the giving tree, this notion of how and in what ways are we able to give to others, to open to others with the model being the ultimate self-sacrificial otherness that we could say is, I guess, part of being, part of life. And I know, see, there's so many people, they hear windy poops and fairy dust and unicorns and other kinds of things. And it's not that. It has to do with, I guess, kinds of experience of what it means to be human. That is, to be human is to always already be otherized. That others are a condition of my being, not just a feature of my experiences. And language is the exemplar. I mean, language is a vast, invisible ship that all of us are riding in. And you have become yourself through immersion in the care of others. I mean, language is, it's a record of others' articulate care, and you're able to dwell within it. You've become yourself by coming to terms with the world that you yourself did not invent, and even your own name. But there's so many ways in which otherness is part of who we are, and yet it flees from us. You know, all the unknown others who have fashioned the language that now we appropriate as our own, and which allows us to literally become ourselves, but it's a self whose boundaries between others is more ambiguous and fuzzy than common sense, I guess, makes it seem. Now, all this, I guess, is a lot of wind up and round around for, I guess, digressive, tangential entrances to this larger question of, what, if any, are good reasons for dying? And maybe a different way to say it is, what's worth dying for? Is there anything worth dying for? Now, I think that some things are more worth dying for than others. And what seems so interesting here in this context is that everything dies. Everything that is alive dies. And as dying, it's just inevitable. But it would seem that humans bear a kind of unique burden of choosing or being self-aware of not only their death, but their reason for living, which is also choosing those causes that are worth dying for. I mean, if you have to die anyway, isn't it worthwhile to die for a cause? Now, what would be the kinds of causes that are worth dying for? How about causes for absolute nonviolence? I think this is why Jesus is a very interesting person in history. Very similar to Socrates, right? Very similar to Gandhi, to Martin Luther King. You find these people who, in civil, calm ways, tried to change the existing status quo or the power structures or, I guess, the injustices that they saw in the world, and they joyfully participated in the injustices of the world. They went, I can affirm this even to the point of allowing others to kill me. While I'm not going to kill them, I'm not going to bring violence, but this is a cause worth dying for. I mean, I think that because we can think and can talk about reasons for living, it means that we can also talk about causes worth dying for. And I think some causes or ends that can be served, they uplift suffering and even the fact of death. And they could be things like beauty incorruptible. For a cause worth dying for could be sacrificing oneself for the larger community. And I don't mean marching in line with an army, sacrificing yourself as a terrorist and or as a suicide bomber. No, not at all. It's to what extent can you take the inevitable suffering of your life and the very fact of your death as known parts of your life and bring about the kinds of contexts for meaning that come from choosing those causes that make that dying make some kind of sense. Okay, so those are some thoughts. Thanks.